Hey guys, welcome back to K97.5. This week we have something a little bit harder for you. We have some Metallica, For Whom the Bell Tolls. Hey guys, it's Chris, and I'm back with James from Daily Use of Sports Trivia, and we're back for another Game of Thrones Q&A/prediction video. I think we'll throw in a few predictions here based off some questions.
From Carrie from Patreon. If a person contracts grayscale and is cured, then can that person contract it again, or are they immune? Love James's tie-dye t-shirts.
I wonder where these questions come from, huh?
Yeah.
No, we don't really know. There is some evidence that there still may be an issue after you're cured because Shireen was cured as a kid. You know, apparently kids can be cured and adults cannot be, apparently.
Okay.
But when Shireen ends up at the wall in the books, a character named Val, who is a wildling in the books, she says she is unclean. And even though they told her she used to have grayscale when she was a child, but she's been cured and all that, and they call her unclean. So that's really the only evidence that they think. It seems to be indicating that it thrives more in colder weather.
Okay.
And that's kind of why we mentioned a while back in Dragon Part 2 or 3 about the Jorah, nuclear option.
Yeah.
It's kind of what gave me that idea about that because,
thrives in colder weather, yeah.
Val says that she's unclean and she's not cured no matter what you see. So we just really don't have any answers beyond that. So hard to say.
I must say thank you, Carrie, for bringing up my tie-dyed shirt. My tie-dyed shirts, I've worn tie-dyed since I was a teenager. I love them. And now my daughter's a teenager. And whenever she gets just wild hair, she'll tie-dye some shirts for me.
She does. She gave you four for Christmas.
Yeah. So now I probably have about a dozen different ones. Some of them aren't worthy of being on camera, so you'll see a lot of repeats. But thanks for noticing them. I always wear them, because my daughter made them for me, and I love them to death.
Yeah, he's an old hippie. Hey, that's what we'll do though. We got the Smokescreen shirts. We got this one. We got the regular logo shirt. I have some new designs coming out, by the way, on the way. I'm testing them out because I always order a shirt myself to make sure the print's good and all that. We'll do some sidekick t-shirts.
I would
some
love
tie-dye sidekick t-shirts. Let us know what you think about that. Honestly, that'd be cool.
T-shirts.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. We'll have a little mask or something there too with the logo.
I love it, man. I would be flattered. Okay, this question comes from Jason Targaryen.
Jason Targaryen.
I don't trust him already. All right, it says, "Hey James and Chris, love the videos.
Hey Jason.
Although I try to watch other YouTubers' videos on Game of Thrones some, you guys are the best and most insightful. It's all him, brother."
No. There's lots of good channels. I just don't have a lot of. I just don't do anything else, honestly.
Can I ask you something on camera?
Sure.
I read all of his comments, of course, because I try to pick some for the Q&As. And a lot of you guys are saying, best, Game of Thrones channel, you're my favorite, and things like that. Now, I know not all of you do, but there are a lot of them. Why do you think you don't have more subscribve
I don't know. It's hard to say, man, because you know me. I've dug into this now for 2 years basically. I mean, I wasn't when I first started the channel. It's basically 2 years old now. I wasn't doing it full time, serious about it. I was just like, I'm going to talk about some movies, some Superman and Batman shit, and Avengers or Star Wars, and and then when I started doing Game of Thrones and fell in love with that and Ice and Fire, I started getting serious and looking into how to YouTube, analytics, what to do, and you get all the same kind of information across a lot of sites, but there is some stuff you'll pick up here and there, and when you're starting to research it. I even have a channel about YouTube, a separate channel, but I don't know. You can never figure out the algorithm, and I have a lot of comments, actually a lot recently, saying, I can't believe you don't have 100,000 or whatever.
I've seen a ton of those.
And it's like, during the season last year, the channel blew up. I came into last January with 4,000 subs, and by the time I ended this year, we're at 36 now, 37, close to it. But it was all the majority of that growth was during the season and shortly thereafter. During from the time that the first teaser trailer started coming out till the end of the season was really the growth spurt. And I can understand that, but
well, I've seen other channels that are growing now, and it's dead stagnant time for Game of Thrones.
Right, exactly. And that's what I've kind of been looking into with this new algorithm change and all this stuff. Apparently, it's been affecting other people, and I started looking into it more. And it seems to be that it's all about daily uploads now, which is kind of why I started the foreshadowing series.
Right.
Well, I enjoy doing it. I've had that idea for a long time, but I was like, okay, well, if I put it in this format, then I can upload more often. And I'll try to see if that helps with the channel growth, because honestly, YouTube doesn't pay well, and that's basically, it's. So, I hate to bring up money, but you have to get to a point where you can survive. So
yeah, but if you look at like some of your videos have high numbers of views.
Right.
Okay. What I don't understand is if you look at that, there's a lot of views and a lot of positive comments.
Right. Not
a lot of thumbs down. Right. Why aren't those people hitting subscribe on your channel?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. You let me know. If you're watching this video and you're not a subscriber, what is it? Is there something that's not good, or I would love that feedback.
I mean,
I don't know. I mean, it used to be that the channel got a lot more views than subscribers, and that's how I kind of graded my own videos. Like if a video was good to me, it got a lot more views than I had subscribers, and that's what and when you get to a certain point, you'll get a call from YouTube themselves, and they'll have a little a session with you about your channel and how to grow it, and they'll go through stuff like that. And the guy even told me,
human on the other end,
an actual guy from YouTube or whatever. You'll have like a one-on-one, and they'll be your kind of coordinator for a couple months or whatever, and invite you to some Google Hangout sessions about it, and where you learn some stuff that you should already really know if you're going to do a channel. But the point being that he was even saying that most channels don't have that kind of ratio where you have 20,000 subscribers at the time, I think it was, something like that, but you have 80,000 views on each video.
Right.
But now I have, like I said, we're up to what, 30, getting close to 37, and now each video is only getting 15, 20,000 views, which is great. I'm not trying to complain, but at the same time, it's weird. It's weird that you don't see this. It's never a steady climb. It's always a lot of valleys in this little roller coaster ride. And honestly, nobody's got it figured out. There's a few channels that are blowing up, and the only thing I can see that is daily uploads, and they're not on camera. Maybe people don't like seeing my ugly mug. I don't know.
Yeah, so, you never know.
It is what it is, and I'm trying to figure it out, guys.
I didn't mean to hijack the...
The Bubba Tea.
Sorry. Didn't mean to hijack your question, Jason Targaryen. But it says, Q&A, despite my surname, Jon is my favorite character in the series. I think Jon deserves to live until the end with all he has been through. Do you see a situation where he survives the others? What if George R.R. Martin plans to have Daenerys have Jon's baby only to die at birth a la Lyanna? That would definitely be bittersweet. Thanks for all you guys do. P.S. Chris, you still haven't taken off your hat, have you? LOL.
I have not. Figure out the 100K issue, right? And we'll do the hat thing. No, but to finally get to your question, I could definitely see that, and we talked about that in part 4. I think it has to end in balance, and there's two ways that can happen, right? I mean, you either have to have Jon survive and the Night King and Dany not, because ice, fire, Jon's both, or you have to have Jon go away in some shape or form, whether that's death or, a lot of people think he's going to become the next leader of the White Walkers.
Yeah.
So he,
we kind of touched on him dying with the baby being born like that.
Right.
That is kind of a cool idea. If she dies, like.
Yeah, that was the alternative. It was her
cool?
going out and her and the Night King having to, we kind of said her and the Night King maybe having to marry in some way to form a pact, so they live. But then Jon has to do something to bring that around. But yeah, I mean, this is all about history repeating itself, and I could damn sure see that. And we had the same thought the last time about the child.
Yeah.
About their, a baby, and they won't know its father.
And
that's kind of bitter.
That is bittersweet.
So I could definitely
see how that turns out for people. You know,
exactly.
When you grow up without a parent or knowing who they were at all.
And you know, you could say that the scene in, I think it was season 1 when Jon and Sam are talking about his mother at night at Castle Black, and Jon said he didn't have sex with Roz because he was afraid that he would get her pregnant and didn't want another bastard run around with the name Snow because it's not a good life for people.
Sure did.
So I mean, that's I could see it.
Well,
I think we'll all be surprised either way.
I'm gonna pin you down. You've joked about it, and I think you're serious. But are you dead serious? 100,000 subscribers. Are you gonna do a whole video with no hat on?
Oh yeah, I'll just stop. I'll finally stop being able to wear it.
Awesome.
Let me make sure people understand. I actually don't. I wear a hat when I just don't feel like messing with my hair.
Right.
I actually don't wear a hat at all. I do now because I'm, a YouTuber kind of, sort of, and I work from home basically now.
Yeah.
And then I just get up and I'm editing all day, and when I go out somewhere, I just throw a hat on. But before this, I really didn't wear a hat that much, honestly. I did on occasion. I mean, I have a lot of hats, but I didn't like wear it all the time. And but what happened was I didn't plan it. The first time I did a video on this channel was a Batman v Superman, preview.
You had one on then?
And it was just like late night. I was like, I'm gonna record a video. I'm gonna try it. And I just threw a hat on because I had shower hair or whatever. And that's it.
The look kind of stuck.
It just kind of.
And now it's got built up.
Yeah, and then people started slowly asking, "Wait a minute, is he bald? Does he have hair?" So I didn't really.
Here's the thing.
I didn't plan this whole hat thing.
I want to be on that video.
Oh yeah.
Because I am missing some hair. But honestly, even when I had long hair when I was younger, I still like to wear ball caps. I just always have. It's just weird. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're in the South. We're all gonna wear hats
for
sure on occasion. But I just didn't wear. It was off and on. I didn't wear it near as often as I do now.
All I have to do, man, is when you get to 100K. Hopefully, it's this summer. That would be nice.
That'd be nice and quick.
All right, I'll go without my hat for a little while. Get this tanned up here, and then we'll do the whole video like that.
Yeah. I actually have to fix my hair again.
But also, Jason says thanks for all you guys do, and I just want to say you're welcome.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
We really do enjoy this. Next question comes from John Carey. It says, "Hey guys, just heard this crazy theory that says Ned slept with Ashara Dane at Sisterton and married her, so Jon's the true son and the others are bastards. The theory looks at when Tywin said Robb was just like his father for marrying the girl he slept with, want to marry Catelyn. Tully had to negotiate with him, and then Blackfish left and never talked to Tully again. Theory claims HBO is leading us on. Is this possible or just tinfoil? Appreciate your comments."
I've seen a few of these comments lately, and I guess this is another, kind of R plus L equals D thing taking traction again.
It is getting some traction.
And I've always said, I'm certainly open to it, but because I don't shut down anybody's theories or whatever. I like hearing them all, but I don't think thematically it makes any sense for him to be anything but an ice and fire child of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Now, there's evidence, sure, that you could point to that says that Ned is actually his father, but for example, just throw out a few things. I mean, this could be a whole video, and I actually may do a separate video on this, but just to do a kind of a abridged version. There's evidence where in the books people think that Jon looks like Ned. I mean, he obviously looks like Ned, right? I mean, people recognize him immediately, looking like Ned, being Ned's bastard, all this kind of stuff. And that's fine, but you have to look at the other side of that, where you see here that Arya looks and acts like Lyanna. So it's almost by proxy that you're basically saying that Jon looks like Lyanna. If that makes any sense.
It does. That does. I see what you're saying.
So you can't just take this half where you have all this, a few things that point to that, and then you have the other half and ignore the Arya Lyanna comparisons because Jon is compared to Arya so much. They're the same. The other kids are like Tullys. Mm-hmm. So it's through proxy that basically it's saying, in my opinion, that Jon looks like Lyanna. Mm-hmm. And that's where, and that's just one example. There's some other stuff that I could go through But and I do think, now let me say this, I do think that Ned was in love with Ashara Dane. I do. I think that was part of Ned's character development, is that he went through this huge change out of the blue because this war broke out. His sister was kidnapped. He knew later on, he found out it wasn't the truth.
Exactly.
I do think he was in love with Ashara. Brandon goes and gets himself killed by Aerys with his father, and all of a sudden Ned has to be Lord of Winterfell. He never planned on being Lord of Winterfell.
No.
He was in love with her. Catelyn was betrothed to Brandon. Once he died, Ned had to become Lord and go marry this other woman out of duty.
Yes.
So it changed his life. It was about his struggles, and these are some of the things he's thinking back to and remembering. He's damaged, and so it's also part of his character development of how much he had to go through just to protect his sister, protect Jon Snow's identity and all that. So, you got to look at all those things. I think the Ashara Dane stuff, I think the House Dane stuff, for that matter, is more of a thing to pull you off RLJ a little bit.
I'll bet. Yep.
Now, a lot of people will say, "But RLJ is so obvious." No, it's not. It's obvious in a TV show. It took 20 years. People were saying RLJ for. If you read the book starting in 1996, by the time you got through the first book, you already had a lot of foreshadowing that Jon was different and possibly Lyanna's.
Yeah.
But then it took a long time to build up to, okay, wait a minute, somebody wrote down R plus L equals J. So if you think about it from that perspective, if you never saw the show and you just picked up a book first time and you never heard anything about it, would you come to the conclusion that Ashara is Ned's, when it's specifically mentioned? I'll give you one more example. A lot of people use this as evidence as Ned being actually Jon's father for the books. There's a chapter in Catelyn when Catelyn's thinking about all the rumors of Ashara Dane around Winterfell being Jon's mother. So there's already rumors about it. People actually think that's what happened. Even Cersei thinks that's what happened. So George R. R. Martin would not tell us his parentage directly.
Yeah.
All right, number two is that they point to the fact that Catelyn said in one of her chapters in A Game of Thrones that she finally got up the nerve to ask Ned about it. And Ned responded, "Never ask me about Jon Snow." And people say, "Oh, well, she didn't ask about Jon." But she did. Because in the context of what she was thinking, she was thinking about who Jon's mother was and was it Ashara Dane. But it also never tells us exactly how she worded her question. It just says she finally got the nerve to ask him about it.
Yeah.
So you can't look at that and say, well, he answered Jon, so that gave it away. And number one, and number two, why would George R. R. Martin actually write that way and give it away?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So you can't. You gotta. There's evidence to throw you off. One's a red herring and one's not. That's all there is to it.
That's it.
So, but so maybe I'll do a whole separate video, like you said, because you can go through all the evidence and then kind of counter it and whatever, and that would be a good video. And and I enjoyed the discussion. And I think there's certainly a possibility, but yeah, I do think that there was something between Ned and Ashara for sure. I have no doubt about that. That's there because it's not just about Jon Snow. It's about how his life changed and all these people's lives changed with this big event, the war, the rebellion. And so I don't buy it because just if you think about it, this is the story, A Song of Ice and Fire. And the Danes are pre-Valyrian. They're not Targaryens. They can apparently trace their ancestry, but you can matter of fact, you could kind of say that Valyrians were post Dane in a way because they had the same features. So some people say, well, that means he could still be an Ice and Fire baby if he's a Dane and a Stark or sort of the Morning or whatever. But if you think about the two biggest houses are built up that he writes about, separate books about, Targaryens and stuff, and the history of Targaryen kings and the Starks and Kings of Winter. House Dane is really not that big of a deal.
Yes.
In the sense of the whole story, it makes no sense if he's not.
And
Rhaegar and Lyanna's.
And this probably goes without saying, but they should stay off the looks thing because, like I was telling you the other day, I was a spitting image of my own uncle. I look more like my uncle, my mom's brother, than I did my own dad. So to say, he looks or doesn't look or whatever, I mean, You can look like your damn
and
uncle.
the thing about it is George R. R. Martin, he does know genetics, and he puts a lot of that stuff in there, and that's how in those days they judge people. That's how he learns that Gendry's a bastard of Robert, right? The way he looks. Exactly. The seed is strong. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the Targaryens, it seems to be that George is telling us that Targaryen traits are recessive, not dominant. Mm-hmm. So anytime that the Targaryens intermarried, they mostly intermarried in the past, they always maintained their silver hair, lilac eyes, all that kind of stuff, right? But most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time when they married outside the family in later years, the children were a mix. They looked like their mother most of the time. I would say most of the time. Not all the time. For example, you had Aegon,
of course,
that apparently was killed. Whether he's still alive or not, we don't really know. But he has the Targaryen features, and if he actually is Rhaegar's son, that's one example where he does look like his father and not his mother. But, Rhaenys didn't. But anyway, the point being is that, it seems to be that Jon would look like Lyanna, not Rhaegar. That's what seems to be the overall theme about that when we look into other Targaryen marriages and stuff and their children, they all don't have the Dany look, right?
Right.
But of course lilac eyes in the books versus the show. But anyway,
are you settled down from the?
Did I get on a rant or so? I felt like ranty there.
Well,
I don't know.
It's come back.
I just
it went away for a while and it's back.
Look. People are going to say that they're not going to do the same in the books because he would never give away that secret in the show. Yes, he would. Yeah. Number one, he answered the question to get the show in the first place, or Dan and Dave did.
Okay.
He had to answer that question to get the show, signed on by George R. R. Martin. Now, does that guarantee that he can't, change in the books and have it different? No, certainly doesn't. There may be some legal things behind it. I don't know. But the point being is that's too big to be different. There's a lot of changes from the books. A lot of changes from the books in the show, and it has to be that way. Because think about it. These books wouldn't be half as big if you didn't have all the descriptions of food and clothing, which is very important. He adds clues in that stuff.
I know what you're saying.
But the point being is, on the TV show, when you look at it at the TV screen,
you don't need it.
You don't need that paragraph.
Yeah.
You see it in a half a second or 2 seconds, whatever, and you see what they're wearing, you see the detail, you see what they're eating. But in the books, you have to go into all that detail, and he does hide stuff in there. But anyway, the point being that it's something that big, what this story is essentially revolving around, a Song of Ice and Fire, is not going to be some, Aegon who you barely hear about in the books. To some supposedly the surviving son of Rhaegar. You know what I mean? Being some special. Now, he may come over and be a dragon rider. He may be important to the end game, no doubt about it. But regardless of whether he's a Blackfire or a Targaryen, he's still got dragon blood. He's still important to the story, he's not the Song of Ice and Fire.
Nope.
He wasn't born at the Tower of Joy, and HBO did confirm that. They did release a graphic because they didn't, confirm Rhaegar. A lot of people said, well, they didn't confirm Rhaegar. But they did confirm Rhaegar because we heard about Rhaegar for 4 seasons before that.
Yes.
Or 5 seasons before that.
Mm-hmm.
We heard about how great he was, and Sir Baron Selmy brought him up, and Dany brought him up, and, all this stuff. So he was built up. Ashara Dane wasn't built up. We never heard her name in the show, and something that big would be in the show. They're going to stick to the big plot points. They have to be the same.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's like Star Trek and Star Wars.
Ha!
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I'm on her.
It is. That's a good way to put it. All right. The next question is from Lauren Wagstaff. It says, Q&A. I'm watching Season 6, Episode 6 now, and it just hit me. Benjen and Bran were talking about how Benjen nearly died. Instead, he was saved the same way the White Walkers were created. Dragonglass. Instead of killing the original king/Stark, the glass saved him from death, but turned him into something else. Benjen too. Both were cured from death. I'm afraid that Jorah will figure this out, use Dragonglass to cure himself, but possibly become something else too. Thoughts? Wow, you just blew my mind, Lauren. That's a good question.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is Benjen wasn't cured from death. He was cured from turning to a white. Because he specifically said that he got stabbed in the gut, and he was dying. But after you die up there, even if the Night King's not around, you turn.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what saved him. So that Dragonglass saved him from being a white. Now, the connection there, obviously, is that he's a Stark. Because the Night King was not saved from death. He was completely healthy and just tied to a tree.
True.
And got the dragon glass shoved in his chest, and that would probably kill most people. But there was something about their magic, whatever they were chanting and all that stuff, and dragon glass being, frozen fire. And we think, we've talked about in Dragon that he was a Stark or a proto Stark.
DNA.
Exactly. So, because you got to ask yourself, if Benjen was with the ranging party, why did the children not save the other 2 or 3 or whatever? Why just Benjen? Because he was possibly the only one with that ability to be saved. So, but it does beg the question what that means.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it does. And I could see a twist like that. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it, but that would be neat if he tried to save himself with dragon glass and something happened.
That's certainly a cool idea for sure. I mean, I think it would be better actually than going to the Citadel and just meeting Sam and mixing some potion up. Which I think that's probably the way they'll go, just in the show at least. But Jorah is a Mormont. They have the blood of the first men too. That there you go. If there's a connection with being, it takes some kind of that first men children blood, that DNA. That's a possibility. It's certainly an interesting way to do it. So it's a cool idea.
Every time Benjen's brought up, so many questions come to my mind. He is such a unique character in here.
Yeah, and the thing is in the books,
the blend, like you said, of Benjen and Cold Hands or whatever.
Yeah, in the show at least. Now the thing is, and that's what I was going to say, is in the books, George R. R. Martin has said that Cold Hands is not Benjen. But he could have lied. He could have just lied to his editor. Honestly, because then in the books at least, and that's one thing that I thought, that's pretty odd about the books as compared to the show, is that it makes sense for Benjen to be Cold Hands, right? He disappeared. You don't know what the hell happens to him, and he's got a purpose. So we see him again, and we know why. He was saved Bran, which is a part of the end game. But in the show, that means there's 2 people that you don't know what the hell is going on.
Every time I see his name or think about him, there's so many angles you can play with him.
Yeah,
in this end game.
There's a lot of questions about Benjen. A lot of people think that
because he's Stark.
Why did he join the Night's Watch in the first place, right? I mean,
you threw me that curveball.
And I think, honestly, I don't know if there's some big secretive thing to it. I mean, you had to think about kind of going back to the Ned thing we were just talking about, how his life changed. Benjen was the 3rd son.
Yeah.
He was never going to be the Lord.
Right.
It was Winterfell, and he didn't really have nothing else better to do. Ned went off to the Eyrie and all that stuff with Robert, and then, of course, the whole thing happened with Brandon dying. Ned had to come back. He still wasn't going to be Lord. So it's like, there was an honor. There was still some honor in serving in the Night's Watch. Starks had done it for thousands of years,
And they take that vow to never be able to come back, right? Like, so say he goes up there, joins the Night's Watch, and then Ned would have died like he did.
Yeah, he can't go back. Yeah.
He cannot come back.
He cannot come back to Winterfell.
Any claim to anything.
No, and now a king can override anything.
Right.
For example, if there was some king on the throne that gave a damn about Winterfell and wasn't their enemies, at the time, he could go up and say, he would talk to the Septon or whatever and say the Septon said it's okay because of this happened, that the gods will release you from your vows. And it could overturn that and say you can go back and be Lord of Winterfell. Just like Stannis, because Stannis claimed he was the king, offered it to Jon. He offered Jon, kneel before me and rise Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North.
You're right.
So that can be overridden by a king. Now, the question is, just like Jon was too honorable to take it, even though that's what he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
So he had already said vows, and nothing was going to, just like Ned, nothing was going to change that. So there's always a lot of questions about Benjen and why he went in the first place. A lot of think people he knew the secret, but I don't think Ned told him either, because if you're not going to tell your own wife who you actually love and care for and all that, why would you tell your brother?
Exactly. So, this next question is from Jinxed Zero.
Jinx Zero.
Q&A. What if Dany is destined to be an evil ruler and the White Walkers are the ones that have to stop her with the use of Jon or something? I mean, that's a wild little twist.
Yeah, I've heard various questions like that, or variations of that question, as far as Dany being the one who's invading Westeros, and she's the true enemy, and the White Walkers are only going to stop her. I just don't see it, honestly. I see this as a repeat of history. She's coming over like Aegon did. Kind of like I told you earlier in the other Q&A. Aegon didn't come over there and just destroy everybody. He came over there and became a Westerosi and created his sigil and said, I'm like you and I offer you peace, but I'm going to be king. If you don't want that, then we can
talk about the dragons. I
got Balerion the Black Dread back here. But the point being that I don't see all this buildup of Dany coming from this little girl in the books, especially in the books. She's young, and this build up and her learning about slavery and freeing slaves and being this she's a conqueror, but she's also a liberator, and this complex story about her growing up and learning to be a queen and wanting to take back her throne. Yes, she's wanting her throne. But I don't see her entirely. I mean, she's doing the right thing too.
It's kind of about perspective, though.
It is. And that's what's great about this story is that's what's unique about this whole series in the books is everything's a POV.
Yeah.
And it can be flawed. So yeah, and from her perspective, she's doing a good thing by going to get her throne back, and she's freeing everybody on the way. But other people may see her as an invader for a while.
Yeah.
But I don't see her as ultimately evil. And
no,
I don't
either.
Just like I don't see the White Walkers as ultimately evil. They're doing evil shit, but they have a point of view too that we just hadn't heard about yet. And that's where we talked about our theory in part 4 of Dragon Raised by Wolves. Because they're heading to a destination, and they have a reason for doing it. Now, they're doing some bad shit on the way.
Exactly.
But
wow, it is crazy parallel.
So that's right. It goes back to the symmetry of ice and fire, right? Mm-hmm. With Dany being fire and the Night King being ice.
Next question comes from Matt Roper.
Matt Roper
says, can you talk a little bit about the parallels between the weirwood trees and the trees in Quarth outside of the House of the Undying, which make shade of the evening? Weirwoods are white with red leaves, and the trees in Quarth are black with blue leaves. What do you think this means?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I know that the warlocks drink this and makes their lips purple. Supposedly enhances their abilities, but it turns their lips purple.
Okay.
So I would think it would just basically be a parallel between two different types of trees. You had this one tree over in Westeros, the Weirwood.net, that essentially enhances Bran's abilities because they make this so-called Jojen paste from them. And on the other side of the world, you have these trees in Quarth, described with different colors, but they do enhance the warlock's abilities too from the drink they make from them. So more than likely, it's just a parallel that George wrote into the book series about these different people or groups getting their power from nature.
I like you digging,
Yeah, it's certainly interesting.
Trying to figure out something.
Now I have to go, refresh my memory and look up the trees again.
Because
there may be something to it.
You never freaking know in this story. But here's a little short question from El Matan. It says, how many times have both of you read the books, and which one was your favorite? I'll take this one. I've read the first book, and that's it. I did enjoy it, but I fall in love with the show, and I'm okay with just being a show watcher. I really am. Those books are huge and long and take a lot of time, and for me, I love the show, and what they do is visually stunning, and it's as good as my imagination. That's just me being honest.
Right. Yeah, and for me, I've read the books, I think, 4 times with rereads, and in the last couple has been audiobooks. I love the audiobooks because like you said, right now doing YouTube, I can't sit down and read very often as far as that. I mean, I still enjoy it. I'd rather read a book than listen to audiobooks, but it's convenient.
Yeah.
And I can throw it in, on a Bluetooth while I'm in the shower, driving down the road.
Too. And the voices are great.
Yeah, and I love Roy Detroit's for the most part. He's got a couple of voices I don't dig, but definitely check out the audiobooks if you hadn't, because they're, you can just listen to them while you're driving, and you'll pick up some more things. And every time you, just like watching the show, every time you read, you'll pick up more and more. And as a matter of fact, it's been a while since my last one. I need to do another reread before Winds of Winter for sure. So I need to start that now because it takes forever.
Hey,
you know what I mean?
That'd be cool.
And get back, because honestly, I've probably become pretty rusty on some book knowledge because it's been a while.
Yeah, it might inspire me again. Heck, I always love hearing your little tidbits whenever you are reading the books or watching the shows.
But I tell you what,
you always bring something new to me.
Yeah, I tell you what though, you'll end up just wanting to do a video or having a discussion about something in the show. You'll go read articles and watch YouTube videos on other channels, and you'll think, okay, that you'll actually read the book without actually reading it, if that makes sense. You get so much of it, so many little quotes from here, or this chapter's discussed somewhere, and you end up kind of reading it again anyway, out of order. So you actually read it a lot more than you think. When you're researching this shit, and looking it up because you're obsessed with it, probably an unhealthy obsession, you actually read a lot more than you think. So I might as well sit down and just fucking read them again.
Yeah, you should.
But yeah, it's definitely time for
how much you have read.
Yeah,
if you just put the whole catalog together, whether it be just forums or
right. That's what I mean. It's
constantly.
Crazy. Yeah. I need a break actually from this saga, because it's one of those things when you have, especially when you get a good idea for a video, you go to bed thinking about it, and it's like, why am I thinking about Game of Thrones right now, or a certain book or a chapter or whatever.
Speaking of going to bed thinking about it, the audiobooks, that one you loaned me.
Yeah.
I fell asleep listening to that thing.
Did you
dream?
Osmosis and dreaming of Dragonfire? Well, you're not quite Dragonfire in the first book.
From John Carey again.
All right.
Hey guys, love the series. I definitely don't think the children are all gone. I'm expecting George R.R. Martin to flip the script, and the children are the bad guys, not the others. Think about it. They fought the giants and attacked the first men. They didn't try to talk it out until they were defeated. And what about Sarah Seastar? Think she could be Old Nan, sent to Winterfell by a three-eyed crow to educate Bran and keep an eye on him? Sure does hate crows and calls them all liars. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, well, Shiera Seastar, which I'm assuming you're talking about, was Bloodraven's half-sister.
Okay. And
she was said to be a sorceress. I don't think she's Old Nan. I think Old Nan that's a different... she's been at Winterfell forever. Her history's kind of known, and with she lost her family during the war and lost other people to. Her children have already lived and died, and she's just still living. Bran describes this in a Game of Thrones, as a matter of fact, how she just keeps on ticking, and her last relative is Hodor. And so, I think Shiera Seastar is, if I would guess, if I think she's some secret, because everybody's got to be still alive somehow,
right?
Apparently, I think if she's anybody, she's probably Quaithe, because in the book she wears a completely different kind of mask. It's not that thing you saw on TV, and she comes to Dany in dreams, and Dany actually sees her in the stars when she's talking to her in the Dothraki Sea, reminding her of who she is. The dragons remembered to you. So, with that little hint that he puts in there about how she saw her through the stars, a mask of stars, and her name being Shiera Seastar, and also there's some symmetry there with Bloodraven, if you think about it, because Bloodraven's kind of over here with Bran and Jon, watching the Westerosi and trying to fix things, or I guess save the world.
Did you say that's his half sister?
Yeah.
Then she's dealing with Dany.
And she's kind of on the other side of the world, kind of. But I'm not really sure, obviously, because my big question with Quaithe was, if she's like, Ashara Dane, or, because they never found her body when she supposedly threw herself out a window. They never found her body, or Shiera Seastar for that matter, whoever she may be. Why just take off and live in Quorth? You know what I mean? Maybe she's been following her around her whole life or something, or maybe in the books it's, Ashara Dane's actually with Aegon or whatever. That's certainly a possibility, but if Shiera Seastar was still alive some way, it would kind of parallel with Bloodraven still being alive. Now, she is described as a Shadowbinder from Ashai, but she's not associated with the Red God like Melisandre is.
I'll be damned.
So that even lends a little bit more support to me that it would be Shiera Seastar, because she was never, nobody even heard it. Her during her time when she was alive and Bloodraven was younger, being Brendan Rivers, you never heard about the Red God. It was kind of a newer thing.
Wow.
It was over in Essos, I'm sure, but not in Westeros. So she's not really associated with... She's the only character that you see that's called a Shadowbinder from Ashai that's not associated with the Red God like Melisandre and Kinvara now.
Well, let me ask you about the first part as far as the children of the bad guys.
Yeah, I think it goes back to kind of what we were talking about in Dragon.
Perspective, almost.
It's perspective. I don't think there are bad guys. I think that the children, they had a legitimate gripe with the first men coming over. They were the natives, right? And apparently they didn't really get along with the giants, but they kind of lived by them. Okay. And the reason people think they didn't get along is because the Maester said that there were giant skeletons basically found with dragon glass arrowheads in them. So apparently there was some fighting at some point. But at the same time, the first men came over, started chopping down their trees, and that's a problem too.
It is a problem.
So they had a legitimate argument there, but the problem is they went with the nuclear option. They created the Night King.
Yeah. And
now they're paying for that. So that's the kind of the anti-war part of this war story, right? Is all right. Bad things happen when you go nuclear.
Yes.
And that's what the White Walkers are,
that's
I think.
Right.
So I don't think they're bad. I think they did some bad things, like a lot of people.
Right.
It's all gray.
Yeah.
So they had a legitimate gripe, but they did something unnatural that fucked up the seasons, I think. I think that's what caused it. Kind of proving that a little bit in the show. When we saw the flashback when Bran and Bloodraven saw him created, it was in the land of always winter, and it was perfectly springy.
It was
springy.
springy.
It was perfectly fine and green. It was all green and lush, and then you saw Bran goes back when he gets marked, and it's the same spot, but it's snow and it's the land of always winter. So that, to me, indicated that that's what screwed the seasons up. Because it was kind of an unnatural thing.
That just made me think of something, Chris.
All right.
You know how we've talked about the language of the others and everything? And how can the communication happen with them? If the children don't have a actual language or whatever, how were all those deals made?
Well,
there's got to be some way to interpret between these languages.
It's described that they have a language, but it sounds like the sounds of nature, the running of streams or whatever. You know what I mean? So I guess it's just one of those things where, if I would go and say Japan, which I would love to do.
About drawing in the dirt and stuff?
Yeah. If I would go immerse myself there long enough, I would start picking up things, understanding association actions with words, and you would learn the language. So I guess it's just one of those things that took time.
Because they had no way, I guess, to really express how important those trees were to them. They're basically saying, don't cut my trees.
And how would you do that? I mean, I would say you would basically run up and kind of guard it with gestures. I guess it would start with gestures.
But what I'm saying is, the men are just thinking, they're just being asses and don't want us to cut the tree. They couldn't tell them how important these trees were.
Right, until some time had passed.
Yeah. The problem is, they had time to somehow communicate with them, but as far as the others go, they're too wild and mean to take that time and do that. So exactly. It's gonna.
But again,
somebody's got to communicate.
Right, and apparently something happened with the first Long Night and the others, and something happened with Craster and the others. So it happened somehow.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to,
I still have that vision of Craster running with the baby.
Yeah, and dropping it or holding it up. Yeah. Hey, look what I got. You want it, or just throwing it, and then they stop and catch it. And then they kind of.
And from then
on, they don't bother him.
All right, and this next question is from Mark Joseph, a.k.a. the Snow in Winterfell.
Snow in Winterfell. Thank you, Mark.
It says, so in the first book, Dany dreams she's on a dragon back and lays waste to an army armored in ice at the Trident.
Right. Dreaming she's Rhaegar.
In her dream, she thinks it's the usurper's army, and she's playing the part of Rhaegar. With your theory about the God's Eye, could this be more supporting evidence that the battle for the Dawn will mimic past events, and there will be a huge battle at the Trident between men and the others? Also, with all the warriors heading north, Beric, Thoros, Hound, etc., do you think all men will be pushed out of the north entirely?
Yeah, well, for the first part, I do think it will mimic past events, for sure. I think that she did, she thought it was the usurper's army, Robert, because she heard all the stories, and she doesn't realize it's the real war, that's coming. So now, will it take place exactly at the Trident? I don't know. That would be cool.
Yeah.
That would be a good place for at least a battle, because it would kind of, history repeating itself type thing. Another location you're familiar with as far as the history goes, and there's a big battle there. But I think it does support the idea of this whole thing repeating itself, and she's she thinks it's this thing, but she's not. It's cluing her. It's telling her the future, essentially.
Yeah, it is.
But she doesn't know exactly what that means yet.
By using the past, it's showing her the future.
Right. So she sees the ice-clad warriors. Obviously, that's a reference to their armor, how it was described in the book. So I definitely see that for sure. So I think it supports that 100%. Now, men being pushed out north completely, I could see it. I mean, I think in our theory, at least what we talked about in part 4.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would be, because I think if they're coming down now, I mean, maybe it depends on. Now you're getting kind of technical about their route, right?
Yeah.
Are they coming down?
Exactly.
Are there people? There's still got to be people on the edges living in small.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
But
too,
the winter, though, the winter will kill them.
Good point.
So they don't have to be there necessarily, like physically stabbing people.
Don't.
So I think if they do head to the God's Eye, there's going to be a hell of a path of destruction all the way to the God's Eye. So I think that's certainly a possibility, and that's part of the whole bitter part of the bittersweet thing, is there's going to be a lot of dead people.
Is there going to be some mass pilgrimage south
to
beat the winter?
There's usually not.
Okay.
But with this particular winter, Jon would probably try to warn people, whether they listen or not, get south. If they, assuming they do come to the wall, which I think they obviously will.
When the wall collapses.
Yes, when the wall collapses.
There'll be a lot of ravens flying.
They're better down. Yeah,
and
there should be.
People should heed the warning and get the hell out of there.
You would think.
If they hadn't already.
Now, that again, how fast do they move? You know what I mean? They're on horses too, and they just got a horde walking behind them, but. So I don't think they necessarily move supernaturally fast, but yeah, I mean, I can see that for sure. Is basically the North being just wiped out.
Man.
And then at the end of this thing, you have a new, King of Winter or Warden of the North, or Sansa's the Queen in the North, or whatever it may be. But everything's got to be rebuilt with a little hint of spring, a little dream of spring.
Good point.
I think that's the way. I mean, I think that's what she's seeing. I think that's pretty straightforward. And let me just add this.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Some things are just straightforward. Everything is not necessarily a riddle to solve.
Cryptic and all that. Yeah.
Some things will just happen kind of the way you see them. I mean, or it is something. Sometimes it is what it is. That's all there is to it. So I think that's certainly a possibility.
Well, I did dig up another question here, and this is from a patron on Patreon, Vasily Krasan.
Vasily, new Patreon.
What are your thoughts on the ghost of Highheart and her significance / importance to the story? Do you think she's a child of the forest? If not, how do you think she gets her visions if she isn't really a priestess of the Lord of Light?
Yeah, I think, she's the one who, she wasn't in the show, but Melisandre kind of took her place a little bit as far as a little bit of her arc with Arya. In the books, Arya is with the Brotherhood, and they run across the ghost of Highheart, and in exchange for a song, she tells them her visions. Okay. And it said she's associated with Jenny of Old Stone. So there's some question as to whether, because she's just described as short in stature, possibly a child of the forest. So I think it's certainly a possibility.
Well, that's one of the questions. Do you think she's a child of the forest?
I'm not 100%, but I don't think she is. Okay. I think she is related to him somehow or another or whatever. Okay. And there's I've never known, as far as the history in the books that we know of, and I don't remember anything in the World of Ice and Fire about it. They learn to communicate with each other, but which way? Did they both learn? Did they learn the common tongue, or vice versa? You know what I mean? But she speaks normal. You know what I mean? But as far as the visions go, I think the more important part of this, for me at least, is, and this goes into a lot of other questions.
How do you think she gets her visions?
How do you think you get her visions? Is that how does Melisandre, Kinvara in the show, all these people get their visions? I think it goes back to the old gods, Bloodraven. Because I don't think there are gods in the story. Now, we'll never be told straight up, directly there are gods or they're not. They're not going to show up. But I think it goes back to Bloodraven, and I think the big hint for that is the Males chapter in A Dance with Dragons, where she sees a boy and a wolf and 1,000 eyes floating in the fire. Obviously, that's associated with Bloodraven, 1,000 eyes and one, all that kind of stuff. So the question is, and I'm really interested to see season 7 or Winds of Winter, is will Melisandre, since Bloodraven is dead in the show, will she continue seeing anything in the flames?
Yes.
Unless Bran takes it over.
Son of a bitch, yeah.
So I'm really curious is if the same thing kind of happens in the book, will Bloodraven die or somehow the same way or something similar? Will she continue? Will the flames just all of a sudden be blank? You know what I mean? And that goes into the question, what did Varys see? Who did he hear it from? You know, Kinvar kind of told us everything happens for a reason. Well, could be Bloodraven setting things up. You know, and he needed Varys to bring Dany over there with those dragons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it goes back to, I think the only real power we've seen in this story is ice magic and fire magic. People associate it and they, build this social construct of religion around it. But I think ultimately that's the two powers in this world is this ice and fire magic.
Yeah.
So I think, in my opinion, I mean, I just think right now that they're getting visions from Bloodraven.
What magic brought Jon back?
That's a good question. That did Melisandre actually do that?
Yeah, no.
Was she given the power by somebody or some god, or would have he woken up anyway? Because she walked out of the room and could have been just a timing thing.
Oh, son of a bitch!
So we don't really know, but obviously magic. That goes into the question. If she's given the power, who is she given the power by? If he would have came back by himself without her even, cutting things off. But she did some magic, though. She cut some hair and threw it in the fire. So that was kind of almost a parallel to the Dany dragon scene, right? Because she had somebody burning in the flames while the dragons were being born. She had blood and fire.
Damn, yeah.
So it's almost one of those things. And then you have to question, well, if there's a grand plan, is there a God? It goes back to that whole thing again. So I don't think there's grand plans, but I think there's people manipulating things, and that would be Bloodraven. All right, guys, so we switched places because I want to give a shout out really quickly to all my Patreons. You guys above the $5 mark, I want to thank you as I promised, at least monthly on camera. So big thank you to the following people for supporting me on Patreon. It's a huge deal, guys. You have no idea. It means a lot. So I definitely want to give props where props are due. So a big thank you to John Carey, K. Souza 1024, Jessica McWhorter, Lori Perry, Peach, Terry Becker, Annie Smith, Nicole Cron, Andreas Oss, Andrew Sanders, Mama QB, Red River Giant, Vasily Krasan, Lauren Wagstaff, Robert Thatcher, Jason Targaryen, Heath Hinton, Goska, Kat, Lo Horton, Demetrius, Catherine Bassett, Pri Figueredo, Hetty Hop, Nizar Raje, James Grimshaw, Vega Barkley, Ricky, Stacy Fournay, Anisha Smith, Darren Resinger, Lawrence Frosnick, Nancy Bruno, Tamika, Steve McKenna, Joe Gaylord, 123, Louis Tolino, Taylor Royal, Garrett Carlson, Carrie Nevis, Marilyn Benitez, Betsy Lease, Joanne Long, and the Senate. So thank you guys so much. Really, really appreciate the support. And of course, a huge shout out to my Patreon executive Smokescreen producers, Hoss Griffin, Vol Guy 10, Lala Gig, Keisa Powell, Marilyn Bentley, and Mark Joseph, aka the Snow in Winterfell. So thank you guys so much. It means a hell of a lot, and got something special for you guys coming for you executive producers, so stay tuned for that. I'll let you know on Patreon. Got a little something coming up for that. So
definitely.
And as usual, thank you for all the support from everyone out there on YouTube land. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys again on Patreon. Be sure to subscribe to get everything, and be sure to hit that little notification bell beside the subscribe button so you can get notified when we drop a new video. Thanks again, you guys. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.